Lately, I've been in a bit of a funk, and I just wanted to kind of walk you through some of the things I do when I'm feeling kind of low or down, how I help myself kind of navigate these downturns in my emotional state. Hi, I'm Dr. Dave, and welcome to the Good Life Lab, where we explore and experiment with tools, tips, and techniques for just boosting our mental health and well-being. And so today I'm going to share a bit about what I do to boost my own mental health and well-being. And just keep in mind, even though I'm a therapist and a coach, this is designed for just supplementing what you're doing. So hopefully you're seeing a therapist, and this isn't a replacement for therapy. So I do want this to kind of be more of a vlog style where I share more about my kind of what I'm going through over the next few weeks. I do want to try to do a 4-week series. And I often do this guy like an assessment, self-assessment for myself, but also with my clients to give a quick check-in with yourself, or for myself, in 4 areas that I've identified. And it does actually come from some research, some evidence-based, practices. But these areas that I've identified for myself have to do with relationships, transcendence, or kind of spirituality. Reason for being or purpose is the 3rd area. I sometimes call them pillars or keys. And the 4th pillar is story or storytelling. They actually come from that. Some of that language comes from a researcher, author, Emily Esfahani-Smith, who wrote this book called Power of Meaning. And she identified them as 4 pillars, but I've, through my own research, kind of came up with these things as well. I want to take you through what I go through. So I'm using myself as my own client to check in with myself recently about these areas. So the first area I often have, rate on a scale of 1 to 10 how I'm doing in each of these areas to kind of give myself an idea of where something might be off or why I feel off in some way or feel like I'm in a funk. So the first is relationships, so connections. On a scale of 1 to 10, I did this earlier, so I kind of gave myself a 5, 6 out of 10 in terms of how I feel in my relationships right now. The second area is transcendence, which really means feeling connected to something greater than yourself. So for me, that's often in nature, getting out for walks in nature. And for a lot of people, that's going to church or spirituality of some kind. But for me, it's the walks in nature. So I've given myself an 8 in that area. I feel okay with my sense of transcendence. The third area that I try to check in with myself and with my clients is purpose. How am I feeling about purpose and meaning in life? And for myself, I gave myself about an 8 for that in that area as well, 8, 9. So feel pretty good in that area. And the 4th area has to do with story, which it can mean different things, but do you feel like you're being authentic with people in your life? Do you feel like you're clear about your identity and also your history, looking back over your life, and are you able to kind of feel good about kind of where you've come from, or at least made peace with a lot of that? So, and I feel like I've done a lot of that work. I feel good right now with where I am in that area. So kind of keeping this in mind, and I'll go through over the next 4 weeks each of these areas and whether I feel kind of in a funk or not, what I do to maintain and also boost those areas of mental health and well-being. So this first area of relationships, where I feel kind of the lowest right now, which has triggered this desire to do this series. I'm just kind of in my friendships particularly, I've gone through a couple of things recently that maybe contributes to why I feel like I'm at a 5 or 6. And I'll just kind of walk through those things to give you an idea of where I am. And so, I've had a few, I guess, more difficult conversations with people lately. I won't give specific names since they may be watching, or people may know who they are. But I just had kind of an in-person conversation with somebody and tried to be as honest as I could about how I was feeling. And we talked about just some differences we have about conflict and expectations in the friendship. And I felt like it was a good, productive conversation, but I left there feeling a little kind of low about it all, or sad because maybe we weren't on the same page. And then I actually got a text from a friend who I haven't talked to in 3 years, partly because there was I just felt like he ghosted me. He really kind of bailed on something that we were working on together. And I've kind of kept him at a distance, or I really haven't reached out, and he hasn't reached out to me, and just recently did. And that was kind of mixed. I don't think we've reconciled quite yet, but whether or not we will or not, I don't know. So it was kind of the second kind of thing that happened. And then I had a conversation with my partner, and just about trying to plan some upcoming adventures and wanting to get that kind of on in our calendars. And that's kind of on hold right now. So just feeling kind of uneasy about a few things in a few areas. So a few things like that, like in just, relationship challenges. I don't know if they're not even challenge, just kind of low points, I think, has contributed to this feeling of a 5 or 6 out of 10 in my relationships. I think one thing that's also contributed to kind of a low point is this last week, my partner was away. And I was at home all alone, and then it seemed like everybody that I was normally kind of connected to was out of town or planning trips, and I was kind of had enough alone time. So that I need to be, even though I'm an introvert, I kind of need to balance my alone time with meaningful kind of connection with other people. So all these things kind of built up and have contributed to me feeling like I'm in a funk. And so one thing I do to help me kind of get out of it is just to, like I mentioned, just kind of check in with myself in those 4 areas and scale myself, like on a 1 to 10, how am I doing? And then it gives me a clue to what I need to pay attention to. So in this case, I knew relationships were kind of a low point. So I want to kind of shift my thinking around how to address those friendships and what to do to boost kind of my mood in that area. So that's kind of the first step of this relationship series, is really just take a quick assessment of where you are with your friendships, with your sense of transcendence in the world or spirituality, with purpose and meaning, and then also your own story and how you're understanding it. So I'm going to give you some exercises for this week. I'm going to try to post 3 times a week, and for this first week is really just about friendships, relationships. Next week will be about transcendence, as I mentioned. The third week will be more about purpose and meaning and how to boost that in your life. And then the fourth week will be more about story and how to connect with your own story. And so for this first week, this first day, just kind of do this exercise for yourself and even write it down. Write down the words connection or relationships, transcendence or spirituality, purpose and meaning, and then story. And then mark on a scale of 1 to 10 in each of those areas where you think you are in that. That'll give you a good clue of how you're doing and things that I can suggest to help you kind of boost those levels a little bit. So that's the first day this week, is just kind of track yourself, assess yourself and where you are and how you're doing in those areas. And then we'll get into how to make some changes and boost your relationship perspectives. So coming up this week, I'm going to get into what's called kind of identifying your dominant story and how to kind of challenge those dominant stories, which are often negative things we tell ourselves about relationships. So it's kind of the first step or next session. And then following that, I'll get a little bit deeper if, these challenges to your dominant story aren't working as well as you would like, or you need something additional to help you change your storyline or thinking. I'm going to provide a tool that's well-researched, cognitive behavioral or rational emotive behavior therapy kind of process or tool to work with. So those are a couple of things coming up this week. So I hope you can get started with just a simple exercise of writing down those 4 areas and then rating yourself in those 4 areas, just as an attempt to try to figure out maybe why you're not feeling as good as you want to feel. Keep in mind too that I'm going to try to provide worksheets, and so I might just kind of create this tool to help you rank yourself, and check the links below in the descriptions. I'm also working on a more robust resource to help you create your own kind of longer term, bigger project to address some mental health and well-being issues in your life. Kind of call it a happiness project, if you will, or well-being project. So look for that link as well, and you can get more information on that on my website. So, all right, thanks for joining me today, and I'll see you next time for more information on relationships and how I'm doing, in my relationships. All right, have a good day, and I'll see you soon.